Hello, and welcome to the ALN 2020 Asset Leadership Forum, Restructuring America. I'm Nick Kanoki, the Director of Technology for the Asset Leadership Network, and I'm very excited to be starting off today's event, Pharmaceutical 4.0 Asset Management. One note before we begin, if you're watching the event and want to comment or ask a question, please write it in the chat window or use the Q&A function of this Zoom webinar. We'd love to hear from you. And I think that's it for public service announcements. Here coming up on the screen is a list of our speakers for today. It is my pleasure to introduce Bob Smith, ALN Senior Fellow and CAI Principal Consultant, Asset Management and Reliability. Bob?
Morning. Let me go ahead and share my screen here. Oops. Move a screen over. There we go.
Great, looks good.
Okay, it's good to go. All right, good morning. This morning, we're going to be talking about the pharmaceutical sector as far as information, asset management, and we're going to be talking specifically about a committee that the International Society for Pharmaceutical Engineering has put in place called Pharma 4.0. And then we'll be talking about a project that the speakers on today's conference call have been working on and will continue to work on. And this is all about digital transformation in asset management. Again, we'll talk about Pharma 4.0 and the project PhAIM. This morning, I have Nick Armstrong, who is the CAI Global Director of Asset Management and Reliability. CAI was founded in 1996. CAI has developed global partnerships in providing professional services to enhance operational performance and reliability, primarily in highly regulated industries such as the pharmaceutical and biotech industries. Nick holds a BS degree in bioprocessing science and food science from North Carolina State University. He has production experience in biopharmaceutical food and personal care facilities. His focus is on early equipment management for capital project delivery, risk-based asset management, strategy development, smart predictive maintenance programs, and capital investment planning. Nick is an active member of the International Society for Pharmaceutical Engineering and is a key member in the Pharma 4.0 committee. Nick, I'd like to have you start from here.
Thanks, Bob. So before we get into talking about Pharma 4.0, it's important to understand Pharma 4.0's context in the greater industry. So this is set to mirror the industrial revolutions of 1, 2, 3, and 4. The first industrial revolution was the mechanizing agricultural products. The second revolution was the assembly line of Ford. The third revolution was instrumentation and controls and the advent of bringing computers onto the production line. And the fourth industrial revolution is how to get all of these items talking to each other and being able to make data-driven decisions from multiple data sources. What Pharma 4.0 does is it attempts to set a framework for how we do the digitization, achieve digital maturity within a highly regulated environment such as the pharmaceutical industry. Okay. On the right-hand side here, you'll see a graphic that really kind of outlines what the group is about. I'm not going to read the mission statement and whatnot, but I'll go through the diagram itself. So we're starting with a good basis of data integrity. We want to make sure that all of our information going in is complete and accurate, garbage in, garbage out type stuff. We then have 4 quadrants that we work within. Resourcing, so digitization, workforce of the future is a big part of this. As we move forward, we're going to have to train the workforce to be able to work within this paradigm. Information systems, so holistic control strategies. How do we get all these different systems to talk to each other? And I'll give an example of that in just a few minutes. Culturally, culturally from top to bottom, how do we get the CEO and the manufacturing technician all seeing the same data, all being able to make the same data-driven decisions? And then organization and processes. While ISO 55000, I think, covers a lot of this, this is kind of its main focus here in lifecycle management and a holistic control strategy. As you set your foundation of data integrity and you can achieve maturity in these 4 quadrants, this is the point in which you reach this digital maturity. Next slide, please, Bob. So just like with ISO 55000, the Pharma 4.0 has to start from the top down, right? We have to have a holistic strategy going forward. The organization really has to buy into this completely, not only the organization, but working with outside vendors as well. Okay, so Bob, next slide, please. So the intent here is we're trying to drive data-driven decisions and drive them to the lowest level possible as we go into this. As I stated before, from the CEO to the manufacturing technician, they all need to be able to see the same data up and down the supply chain. All of the systems need to speak to each other. There has to be a strategy assigned with this, and there has to be full transparency between all of these control networks in order to make this happen. So, which leads me to the case study. In the pharma industry, our current operating paradigm is to create large amounts of bulk product. Okay, on the upper left-hand side, you'll see a photo of a kind of a typical pharmaceutical manufacturing plant. We're going to create thousands of gallons of pharmaceuticals in a bulk batch process. This is manufacturing a highly complex protein drug that requires a tremendous amount of control in order to verify safety for the patient. We create large stockpiles of this. We create large tanks of this material and then aliquot it into individual doses into vials, meaning that we have a one batch to many patients relationship. And in addition to that, this whole process can take 6+ months just to get to the final product from start to finish. And then finally, as I stated before, the complexity of the product requires a tremendous amount of oversight. So once a product is produced and it's ready for release, it now undergoes a full review cycle, which we call a batch review cycle. And this can take anywhere from 6 to 12 weeks. So this is our current operating paradigm. And while digitization and Pharma 4.0 and whatnot can certainly benefit this operational paradigm, in today's world, it makes us more competitive. It allows us to make better decisions. In the future, however, Pharma 4.0 is going to be a requirement in order to do business. And I'm going to go into exactly why. Where the industry going, one of the areas that the industry is going today is highly personalized therapies. We still have the same very complex protein structure that's going to come out. It requires the same amount of oversight, but we're going to be designing drugs directly for the patient. All right, so to give you an idea of what that supply chain looks like, you'll go down to your clinic, they'll draw a sample. That sample then gets shipped to the manufacturer. That manufacturer takes your sample, transforms it into a therapy, ships it back to your clinic, and that's injected into you as a treatment. This is unlike today's paradigm that's a one batch to many patients. This is one batch, one patient. Okay. In addition to this, it is many of these drugs have an extremely short shelf life. One of the shortest that I've seen to date is 96 hours. So that means from the time that it's removed, the sample is taken from the patient, it is transformed, it is shipped back to the patient, and it has to go back into the patient is 96 hours. Remember when I said that the review cycle today takes 6 to 12 weeks. In addition to that, we have to be able to ship these samples all over the country, all over the world in order to be able to do that. So really where the future of pharmaceuticals is heading in this direction is really what we talk about edge manufacturing, okay? Manufacturing as close to the patient as possible to decentralize everything that we're doing. In today's paradigm, we have a centralized plant. There may be one plant in the US, one plant in Europe that's manufacturing this product, goes out to all the patients. In tomorrow's world, in the upper right-hand side, you're going to see a hospital. Attached to that hospital will be a modular manufacturing suite in order to make that therapy. So now the supply chain looks like you're in the clinic, they take the sample, they walk it across the hall, they create the therapy for you, and they walk it back across the hall to inject. This decentralization and all the data surrounding this and all the workflows that have to happen and all the reviews that have to happen, we now have to take this review cycle from 6 to 12 weeks to 6 to 12 hours. Likely that review cycle is going to have to be done remotely. And in addition to that, if we have a large pharmaceutical company, they're literally managing hundreds, potentially thousands of these worldwide, while they're not centralized, their data has to be, and everything has to be talking to itself. Okay. So this is where we get into the concept of edge manufacturing, the skill sets required for this, the holistic strategy required this, the asset management, life cycle management required for this is extremely complex and intertwined. And so that's what we're driving Pharma 4.0. In addition to this, just to tie it into recent events, with a pandemic response, okay? As we're trying to develop vaccines for the pandemic, as we're trying to develop therapies for the pandemic, in the future, pandemics may become more geographically complex, where you may have versions of it in one area and not in another. This idea of edge manufacturing and getting us close to the patients, getting us close to the people in order to develop and administer it becomes even more important. The idea of being able to deploy modular manufacturing units directly attached to a hospital in order to treat those patients, we personally believe in the next 5 to 10 years is going to be how pharmaceutical does their business. So this complete integration now becomes a requirement in order to do business rather than something that makes us more efficient and more competitive. Bob?
Okay, thanks, Nick. Again, this is why the digital transformation is so critical, I think, in the pharmaceutical industry, not just now, but we need to get things in place now so that way we can make this transition smoothly and make it so it becomes a reality. Some of the things that different organizations like the International Society for Pharmaceutical Engineering is doing, they've developed a good practice guide. Back in October 2015, a proposal was submitted to their guidance document committee to develop a pharma-specific good practice guide that was based on ISO 55000, the set of standards and the principles and other asset management good practices. That was approved, and then in November of last year, 2019, they actually published the ISPE Good Practice Guide for Asset Management. Again, it provides industry best practices and really kind of explains how pharma can take advantage of the ISO 55000 requirements and interpret it basically into what pharma needs for their highly regulated industry. From this, again, we look at this digital transformation. CAI, the company that Nick Armstrong and I work for, have basically set up a strategic initiative because we see the importance of this. We see where this is going. And then Nick and I are both part of the asset management reliability business area, and we're supporting our company with this initiative. And from that, we started a project called Project PhAIM, and we'll explain a little bit more about that. It's a proof of concept initiative that's focused on identifying, a digital asset information management model that pharma companies can use. And all these, the Asset Leadership Network is important in this. Mark Giuliani and his company, BIM CMMS Data Group, CAI, working together, we're trying to develop this so we can help with this digital transformation. When we look at the project, again, these are all the current speakers today will be talking about different pieces of it. PhAIM stands for Pharmaceutical Asset Information Management, just a name we chose for it. Again, the objective is to help asset owners derive more value from their assets by using both the ISPE Asset Management Guide and the ISO 55001 framework to develop, the integrated digital delivery model to help pharmaceutical organizations with this digital transformation. As far as our goals in this, we want to look at all the different digital processes and technologies that are available today and coming down, in the future. Again, we're looking at all of these different areas. And again, a couple of our other speakers will be talking about some of these. Again, some of the advancements we've seen with some of the augmented reality, the HMT1 or HoloLens kind of digital displays that you wear on your head, really are starting to see some really positive results with that. A friend of mine works in the petroleum industry, and he supports process controls, calibrations in the with the rigs out in the Gulf of Mexico for a major petroleum company. Now they can contact him. He lives in Idaho. They can contact him at any time with the use. I think he's using HoloLens. He can be right there on the oil rig with the technician. He can be looking at a problem, a question. He can be doing training, and he can be interacting with it because you have the ability to circle, an area, look over in this area, or put an arrow and things like that. It's just kind of amazing as far as what's happening now with some of the digital technology, digital twins, actual system interaction that you can do with some of this augmented reality, devices. All right, and the next will be Mark Giuliani. Let me give me just a second here. I want to introduce Mark. Mark is a president of Giuliani Associates. For over 30 years, Mark has been a leading proponent of using technology to provide clients with high quality architectural services. Mark holds a BS in Business Administration from Wheeling Jesuit University and a Master of Architecture degree from the School of Architecture and Planning at the Catholic University of America. After working with his father, Joseph Giuliani, Mark transformed Giuliani Associates from a firm focused strictly in the aviation industry to a firm that now offers multiple services to a variety of industries. Today, Mr. Giuliani and Giuliani Associates provide architectural, engineering, and technology services using building information modeling and facility management tools. So with that, I'll stop sharing and let Mark present what he has.
Thanks, Bob. So what I'd like to talk to you today as I share my screen is to talk to you about starting with clean data and utilizing data as a way to start the whole programming process, the schematic design process, design development, all the way through construction documents, contract administration, and post-occupancy for facility management. These are all different steps in creating an ISO 55000 environment where you minimize the different inputs of the same data so that the data remains clean and normalized. So on the screen right now, what you see is a hypothetical building that we've put into the Onuma system. This is just one of many systems that you can use to start to bring data in. This building was brought in through a Kobe spreadsheet where we laid out a program of different spaces. And so we can start to look at this, and I can take you through here what the outside of this looks like. It's a 4-story building. Here, that was all 4 stories. Here it is with 3 stories. Here it is with 2 stories. And here it is with 1 story. And we'll go into this live, but with the data, we can pull this into Google Earth. We can start to look at each space at a time. We get the room number, the room name, how many square feet it is, what the ceiling height is, what floor it's on. And if we were to input all the data, we would know the capacity through sensors. We'd know what the occupancy limits are. We'd know how many people per square foot you can have. We can also start to put the assets and the components into the space so that they can be tracked through facility management. In a little while, we'll show you what that looks like on an iPad. What I want to do now is share a different screen, which is to show you what this looks like in real time on Google Earth. So let me stop sharing that screen and start sharing this screen. And Mike, chime in if you'd like.
Hi, this is Mike Bordenaro. I'm the Communications Director for the Asset Leadership Network, and it's been my privilege to also be involved in BIM Storm with Mark Giuliani, and which was founded by Kimono Numa for many years. The Asset Leadership Network has been privileged to have a number of BIM Storm demonstrations, which is why Bob Smith knew to introduce this process to the pharmaceutical industry. The Asset Leadership Network has highlighted a airport BIM storm that Mark Giuliani was critical in. And earlier this year, we did a BIM storm on healthcare industry. And so we thank Bob Smith for bringing this approach of entering data once and being able to use it from the very initial schematic planning all the way through to commissioning and operations and management.
Okay, Mike. So what we have here on the screen is
We're not seeing your screen, Mark.
Okay.
Might have to share it to another. And while you're getting that, I'll say that the facilities working group of the Asset Leadership Network years ago established that data was an asset. So this is a way of showing the importance of the data throughout the life cycle of a project. We see it now, Mark.
Okay, sorry about that. So basically what we're looking at right here is the building that was put into a COBE spreadsheet. You're looking at the spaces in the building. This is all 4 floors. As I turn the floors off, you start to see the floors underneath. And this is the ground floor. And we've started to populate some of the spaces here. But just quickly, you can start to see what the space name is, the space number, the room number, the square footage. So the data is in here. It knows that right now there's 13 pieces of furniture in here. There's 139 pieces of furniture in this particular one. And so this starts to allow people to follow this data from the early on user group meetings through the concept design workshops and the programming into the schematic design and such. And so if we were to stop sharing this now and go back into Onuma, we can then show you some more of what we can do within this type of system.
And while you're doing that, Mark, I will say that what this team has been doing in the past few weeks is a mock building project. Nick Armstrong and Bob Smith were acting as the owners, telling us that what they needed was a small batch manufacturing facility. Mark Giuliani has been establishing what that could look like based on models that he had found online. And we picked a location for it. We started laying things out. Nick and Bob were saying, move this here, add this here. Then we were able to share information that you'll see with Nick Kissel to show that the important thing is to have open, secure standards. I said that wrong. Secure, open standards that allows the information to be shared from software to software based on what is necessary in each stage of the project.
So as we look at the different spaces, we have an upstream processing space here that's roughly 4,000 square feet. And we just have furniture laid out and equipment laid out as one might be. And we can then look at the building, look at the space, enter the space. We see the titles there, the room number. All this information is important because it's entered once in the COBE spreadsheet, pulled into the space planning system, and then pulled out and pulled into whatever type of modeling system that you want to use to build your building information modeling into a set of construction documents for the contractor to build the building. And then that data is pulled back out and pulled back into any type of facility management software. So here we are in the actual space. The data can be brought into many different levels. So if I click on this freezer, it comes up, it tells me the size of the freezer. I can enter data such as the serial number, any kinds of information, purchase dates, so different departments can use that information, pictures of it, owner's manuals, shop manuals, all different kinds of information can be put into these. And then each one of these different pieces of equipment has that information associated with it. We've laid out the furniture. The furniture has that same information, the storage shelves. So all of this makes it very easy to share this data onto an iPad. And I don't know if the iPad is sharing data now or not, but if it is, I can show you a walkthrough.
I think you would have to stop sharing the one before you start sharing, because we're looking at upstream. Now we're not seeing any sharing.
Okay. So let me, I have it here on this system. Let me go in and share it.
And again, these are.
And you know what? I think Nick might have to enable the iPad to share. There we go.
I just enabled it. Sorry, Mark. I
Okay.
didn't do that
Sorry.
before.
So I'm going to share content.
And while Mark's sharing that, I'd just like to say that the processes that we're showing are not new. BIM storms have been operating since 2007, and actually before that under other titles. And we're just wanting to bring these processes to other industries.
Nick, can you make the iPad a host?
Yep, working on that right now.
Another quick thing too, Mike, this is coming from ISO 55000. It's important. This is one aspect of asset management. And one of the things that ISO 55001 says is asset management requires accurate asset information, but an asset information system is more than a management information system. Asset management interacts with many functions of an organization. And in reality, it really, all functions of your organization depend on assets. So it's really overall. So
here we are in, thanks, Mike. Thanks, Nick. And Mike, you can chime in when you'd like, anybody can, but this is basically, I'm going to look off to the side here to control this. This is what the system looks like in 3D. You can scroll around into it. I can go into the space. I can get closer. I can actually enter the space and start to look around. But this is at post-occupancy stage of a building. This is what facility managers can use to actually start to click on information, get that data about that information. And here we can see it's a freezer. It was installed on this date. If we had implemented all of this information and data, the manufacturer, the model number and such. And this really is a system that helps better utilize time for building engineers and facility managers. So that's just a walk around that one space.
What's important to understand is this is at the schematic design phase. This is not design development. And therefore, non-expert stakeholders can look at this and say, oh no, you've got to move this here, you got to move that there. But the information about the assets remains with the model, and it can be used going forward. So it's important to understand. This is a few meetings and a few design sessions. This isn't design development.
And so this is what this enables you to work much more efficiently. I can go in real time and start to add different components to this and then export it out, and it'll show up 30 seconds, a minute later in what we're looking at right now.
So these processes can enable Pharma 4.0 to start meeting the accelerated times and schedules. We've got a question about FDA that we'll get to later, Rob, but we just wanted to show the support for the accelerated needs. Now this building, this small batch facility can then be brought to other sites and have much, if not all of these components in them and slightly adjusted to meet the requirements of the other sites. And if there's going to be multiple small batch facilities, this is the type of thing that will help them accelerate their ability to achieve their goals.
So I'm just going to go back into the Enuma model real quick and just show that these components are all custom made, and the data can be put into the system so that it's dependent upon model number. You can put the information such as serial numbers and such into here and start to quickly identify what the material is. And it creates a COBE type spreadsheet that we can go look at in a little bit. And then copying this data is as simple as just copying it, pasting it, and placing it.
COBE stands for Construction Operation Building Information Exchange. It's a standard established by the National Institute of Building Sciences to help with the transition from design and construction to the operation. It allows a commissioning agent to have accurate information about assets so that there isn't a need to manually enter information off of tags by walking around a building. So there are many elements, many organizations that are coming together to try to meet the accelerated needs for industry. And this is a demonstration of how it can be achieved.
And to give you just a quick example, I'm calling up right now just what one of those sheets might look like.
We don't see your screen yet, but that might.
Yeah, I'm just moving things out of the way so you can better see it. So here is an example of what the particular sheet that I used to create this information looks like. So you have different elements and information such as what the room name is. To the left of this, in another hidden column, is a machine number for that space so they don't get mixed up. There's net areas over here on the right side of the screen. And then all these other components can be filled in by the facility management team so that when they're out in the field with their iPad, they can get the different space, the information about the different components they need. And at the bottom, you have different tabs like contact information, what facility we're looking at, what floor we're on, space, zone, type, component. So there's an enormous amount of data that can be put into these spreadsheets. And once you export that or import them into the software, it brings that data in with it. You can modify it graphically, or you can modify it in the spreadsheet. The two interchange with each other in real time. So it's a very powerful tool. Mike, anything you want to add?
The importance of that spreadsheet format is that it allows the information to be shared with other programs in a efficient manner. And that spreadsheet information is what was shared with Nick Kissel in order to demonstrate the capability of easily transferring that for his purposes in a CMMS program. So we'll now go to Nick Kissel and see what he had done with information that was presented from the model that Mark Giuliani created.
Okay, I want to introduce Nick maybe just real quickly. He's the Director of Sales for CMMS Data Group, CDG, which was founded in 2000. CMMS Data Group is a market leader in the CMMS software and services area, led by the award-winning MVP Plant CMMS system, combined with its professional services, technical support. Nick holds a BS in Business Administration, Marketing, Transportation, and Logistics from The Ohio State University. Nick is focused on identifying, developing customer maintenance software solutions, and he has been developing and implementing a comprehensive strategy to revamp CDG's marketing approach. Just a little side note here too, last year, Plant Engineering magazine usually has their awards every year, and MVP Plant version 2.0 received Plant Engineers 2019 Product of the Year Maintenance Software category Gold Award, which is the highest award that they offer. So anyways, take it away, Nick.
Well, thanks, Bob, and thanks, Mike, and everybody who's joining us today. Just to confirm, can you see the screen that I have up?
We can see it, Nick.
Yes.
Perfect. All right. Just wanted to make sure. So we're excited to be part of the Project PhAIM with ALN, CAI, and excuse me, BIM Storm. And as Bob mentioned, since 2000, we've really been helping organizations through our asset management solutions and services that we offer. And today I'll really be focusing in on the role of the computerized maintenance and management system in the digital transformation of asset management. So the first thing that we'll start with is just to kind of understand, why are we needing to manage our assets? Why is it important to track asset related data? And it really comes down to 4 different components: making sure that we have the data to make the best decisions, that we are delivering better quality to our internal and external stakeholders, and then helping support those continuous improvement strategies through better troubleshooting. And at the end of the day, justifying those investments and purchases that we need to make as an organization through complete and accurate data that we've been talking about. So as we expand on the first topic, through better decision-making, we want to track all of that relevant data. And by doing that, we're going to know which asset's really failing the most, it's costing the most money, which customers, whether they're internal or external, are submitting the most work requests, uncovering any dissatisfied customers. And then from a maintenance standpoint, understanding those technicians who are completing the most work orders most effectively and have the highest level of customer service orientation. We really do believe that quality starts with maintenance. So by having an asset management solution, we're going to be able to deliver better quality to both our internal and external stakeholders. And without a system, and if we're not tracking our work or our parts against an asset, it's going to be really difficult to understand what issues that might be coming up in your operation. And then finally, it's, from a better troubleshooting standpoint, this is going to help us understand those failures that are happening on our assets so that we can do better continuous improvement strategies. We can do failure analysis, root cause analysis, and then do better planning for future events. The other thing that having asset information in a system is important for is for that knowledge transfer. As people leave or retire organizations, it's really critical that we don't have that information that about those assets left behind. So having that in a system is really critical. And then finally, with the better justifications, one of the best reasons to have this is to really justify, investments and everything throughout the asset life cycle. So, MVP Plant or CMMS in general can really help organizations throughout the operational phase of the asset life cycle, and then make decisions, when it comes to end of life as well. Many times, people will perceive that these technologies are going to replace the need for labor, but our most successful clients are those that, take the information from the system and do projections and better planning to help increase operational capacity and reduce conversion costs. So a CMMS can really improve the effectiveness. And that's where we're going to store all of the data, is in a CMMS or enterprise asset management solution. And at the end of the day, it's really important because without having the data in a system, it's going to be almost impossible to report on that data. So, unfortunately, there's still a good portion of organizations out there that are still recording things on paper. You have different functional leads populating multiple spreadsheets, or, the other reality is that it's just stored in somebody's memory without being documented. And so it's really critical that any system or any CMMS that you're using has quick and easy reports and graphs so that that information can be shared with the key stakeholders in your organization. So for those of you who are not familiar, CMMS stands for Computerized Maintenance Management Systems. You'll also hear other names. There's different solutions that can be used: enterprise asset management, facility asset management system. But it's really taking that information that Art just showed in a graphical format and getting that data into the system. So as Mike mentioned, that export table, I was able to take that and import that directly into our system within a matter of minutes and make sure that the hierarchy was set up. So having that information being shared is very, very helpful. And a CMMS will consolidate many different aspects of asset management, but also expand it to other areas as well. And it's going to help you track and manage, report and respond to assets, any of the work that needs to be performed on those assets, whether that's preventive maintenance or predictive maintenance. So we're looking at those different acceptable ranges and predicting that something may be failing before a functional failure actually happens. Then we can also track failure codes and failure analysis. We can store the spare parts that we use for those assets, and then also manage the replenishment of those spare parts. And another critical component is the people. So making sure that we have the right people working on the right jobs with the right skill levels. So making sure that we have the right resources dedicated. Our founder often correlates maintenance of assets to the game of chess. It's really critical that organizations have a CMMS software to allow them to respond to a lot of those opposing forces that are happening every day, whether it's cost or downtime or the inventory beast that's taking over a storeroom, dealing with part shortages or customer dissatisfaction. So the CMMS really helps give the information needed to respond. And as we've talked about with the industrial 1.0 through 4.0 and now to Pharma 4.0, CMMS and EAM is also evolving with the maintenance tech methodology. So to this day, many organizations continue to use manual processes. And with those, paper, it's difficult to report. With Excel, it's disjointed, and it's typically maintained by different functions. The other reality is that there's a lot of legacy systems out in the marketplace, and those don't have the technologies and open standards and good reporting that you would need to be able to communicate out to those key stakeholders. And then from a current system standpoint, there are web-based solutions out there that allow you to have access to your data very quickly in whatever location that you're at. Solutions like our MVP plant CMMS offer wireless mobility so that we're eliminating that paper and we're ensuring complete and accurate data that's getting into the system so that we can make those informed decisions versus guesses. And then as Mike alluded to, making sure that the system has secure and open standards through APIs or import wizards or, single sign-on, those types of functionality. And then integrating with sensors and other types of integrations. And as Bob mentioned, we're really starting to see a lot of excitement in the future state of CMMS, where we're, looking at complementary solutions to align with other functional areas. So a lot of our customer base is maintenance. But we'll see solutions that will tie into OEE and production, and then leveraging AI, augmented reality, and virtual reality. So what I'll do is I'll just kind of show you some screenshots of the MVP plant software. This is a CMMS enterprise asset management system. So when you first log into the system, what you'll see is that you'll have a customizable dashboard, and this dashboard can be tailored to whatever information is important to that stakeholder that's going to be logging into the system. When we go to the assets module, we have 4 different classes of assets. So we have equipment, locations, repairable spares, and systems. Repairable spares is a little bit of a unique situation because it's a hybrid between an asset and inventory item. So you can rebuild those and put them back into service. But everything that's critical and that needs to be known is here on the general tab. So all of this information is coming directly from that import template that was provided by Mark. And then we were able to import that using our import wizard. And then we'll also be able to see that asset hierarchy as to how that relates to the overall operation. The great thing is that we can actually run reports to allow us to see our parent-child cost across all levels of the asset hierarchy. As we continue going down the asset record, you'll be able to see all of the related spare parts, any type of meter reading. So for this example, we've set up a single-use bioreactor. And from a meter reading standpoint, we can track like the pH or the temperature of those assets. And then we can actually tie those into OPC or PLC tags and have those automatically generate work orders, whether that's preventive or predictive based upon a frequency that you set up. Or an out of range value. At the bottom, you can see all of the PMs and PdMs. So you can see the next due date and all the other related information. And then as we move on, another component of an asset management solution is the inventory or spare parts component. So what we can do is we can track all of those different parts that are used on our assets to help ensure that we have the parts on hand at the time that we need them, so we don't have parts related downtime. So on this one, you'll notice that I created a connector for that bag for the single-use bioreactor. And then PMs and PdMs, in a highly regulated industry, it's really important for organizations to have that information about preventive maintenance at your fingertips. We set up a PM for that bioreactor. And one of the really critical components of MVP plant in a highly regulated industry is that audit history. And so at a glance, you can see all the times that a work order has generated on that bioreactor, and then the status and the next due date for that PM. So you can really leverage, process surveillance method like predictive maintenance and OEE to help monitor those critical process parameters to help support the critical quality attributes. And then one of the key documents in any asset management solution is the work order. And that's really the document that ties everything together, that includes the labor, the parts, the services that might be required, all back to that asset. So a wireless mobile solution will enable organizations to track 100% of all of their labor and parts while ensuring complete and accurate data. And that's really what's most important, is that complete and accurate data that we've been talking about today. Because without that, we're just guessing or using ideas to make our decisions. So at the end of the day, it's really important that we verify the data. The electronic data collection, it doesn't replace human verification. So like with the work orders, it's really important to make sure that that data is objective and it's complete. And, there's a work order closeout process that helps us take that information that's gathered from that and then take that to put back into the process through continuous improvement, whether it's, better planning, adjustments to PM schedules, those types of items. And then we must analyze the data, right? If we're not going to analyze the data, then we really need to take a step back and determine why are we actually collecting the data to begin with. We really should be taking a look at the industry benchmarks and the organizational KPIs that have been agreed to from an asset management standpoint. And it's really important that we have timely and accessible reporting. So a lot of solutions have the ability to automatically generate those reports and be sent out to all the different stakeholders. So this can eliminate hours, tens of hours, a month, just by automating that delivery of those reports. So we'll kind of look at some of the standard reports that we have at MVP Plant. Have hundreds of different standard reports, but some of these are typically found in any CMMS solution. We'll focus on assets for today, but we'll show an example of some reports that we have. So at the top here, this is asset cost. So you can see here that I can look at my total parts and labor cost for whatever date range that I want. And much like Enuma, where you could export, you can also export in all these different formats. We can also track our downtime. So we can have our scheduled versus actual. And then again, we can take this information and do better planning from a downtime standpoint in the future. We can look at our asset utilization and then our PM effectiveness. So are we actually doing corrective action, or perhaps are we over maintaining some of our assets? And our tagline, or our motto, is shared knowledge for quality results. So, it's really about removing those information silos, by sharing that data, so that we can, help promote those, positive outcomes, and then, get feedback for those that might not be so positive. So this will really help drive the culture, change the culture, and allow all of the stakeholders to act like owners. And then the final point will be about responding to the data. So we need to leverage that data to really drive continuous improvement. And this will help drive improvements in budgeting, better planning, better scheduling. Take those KPIs that you have and compare those against those industry benchmarks. And then, make sure that you have both a combination of, leading and lagging indicators, and then uncover those weaknesses and then respond to them by, identifying opportunities to drive operational capacity and reduce conversion costs. And with that, that pretty much sums it up. In today's market, information is power, and the more that we have better information, the better our decisions are going to be. And then the faster that we respond and the better that we respond based upon those decisions we make, the more competitive that will be. So with that, that's an overview of CMMS and EAM and the importance of data and open standards. I'll go ahead and hand it back over to Nick or Bob, and we'll take it from there.
Mike, do you want to?
That first of all, Nick, Kissel, thank you so much for showing that. It helped us drill down from what Nick Armstrong said was the new mission was to be faster. And I would like Nick Armstrong to talk about how some of the information that Nick Kissel was providing is actually useful to what you were saying about the requirements that need to go down from 6 to 8 weeks to a few hours. And will the automation that Nick Kissel is talking about assist that reduction in time?
Sure. Thanks, Mike. So as we look at what data is required to release a batch, a lot of the asset information is part of that, right? We also have the batch record, the production record, we have the release testing, we have all this other information. But this information, knowing that the assets are in a good state of operating condition, that they're valid, that they're validated, that they're calibrated, that they're all ready to go, is critical to ensuring this. In today's system, we have a human that goes through and reviews every single one of those assets and every one of those calibration reports to make sure that that equipment was in a validated state when it was running to make that drug. Tomorrow, that information should be in a CMMS that's tied into a holistic control strategy that then can allow essentially a computer to review this and just review by exception for human.
And that could be part of an ISO 55001, 7.5 information requirement system, where it's spelled out ahead of time that this is what's going to happen, and there will only be occasional human overview, like you said, for exceptions.
Absolutely.
So the Bob Smith, the ISPE, International Society of Pharmaceutical Engineering, has established its guidelines on ISO 55000 that you helped establish. And you see that being tied into Pharma 4.0.
Yes, the nice thing is it's based on the ISO 55000 set of standards, but it provides industry specific guidance. So it really, I think, will help considerably with the digital transformation. It's going to become so critical, I think, as we do this. The nice thing with like the BIM storm model that you had there, since some of these or most of these facilities will be remote, and they'll have to have a centralized person probably looking at multiple facilities, they could basically view any of these assets, the process, where is the drug in the process. They could see all of that real time, live, through these information models that are developed through BIM. And with the information being transferred back and forth between BIM and the CMMS and the other systems, process control systems, building management systems, things like that, you now have everybody looking at the same information. And that's again where ISO 55000 comes in, where by having the framework and having a model that's consistent that you can use across multiple locations, I think that's really going to help this whole digital transformation, immensely.
And we've got two questions. The first one is from Rob. Nick Armstrong, I think this will be for you. How will the FDA review cycles apply to personalized medicines? Is personalized version approved and the personalization is just a modification? Or do you have any idea how that's going to work?
Yeah, so welcome to our dilemma. This is very new to the industry. The same amount of scrutiny that goes into non-personalized medication or bulk product, the same amount of scrutiny has to be applied to personalized medicine. It has an added complication of chain of custody. So you cannot mix up patient A and B. If you do that, there's disastrous results at the end. So to enable this, the second part of that is the personalized version approved and the non-personalized version approved. There's some, the initial process is approved through the FDA, but there's all types of release testing that occur. This digitization is really what's going to unlock that, because it takes people going through everything to review all of the paperwork, all the release testing as you go through it. To shorten that window from 6 to 12 weeks to 6 to 12 hours is really what I mentioned before of review by exception, right? We're going to have a central information system that will do most of our review for us. And then we will, the information system will tell us where we need to dive deeper into various areas, and we'll review by exception.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And very quickly, we have a question from Igor Starkov, who's been involved in BIM Storm since they began. Thank you for joining. And the question is about ISO 19650, which is a subset for information management. And how does that fit in with ISO 55000? That's a great question, because the management systems that are set up by ISO are set up so that they can interact with each other. So ISO 55001 7.5 says you shall have an information system. And your answer to that can be, we're going to use ISO 19650 as our guideline to meet the requirements of ISO 55000. And that's the same for risk management and continuous improvement. These are like Russian dolls of standards that can work together. So
The best part is from here forward, we actually get to have an open dialogue about how to move this forward.
right. And the thing that I was feeling time crunched on, I would like Mark Giuliani and Nick Kissel to talk more about the transfer of information that they did and how that can accelerate these projects. Because if pharmaceutical companies are going to be doing multiple small batch manufacturing, there's going to be rapid fire. It's going to be like setting up a Jimmy John's franchise where you need to get into the market and penetrate the market before your competitions does. And time to market is going to be critical. So Mark Giuliani, can you talk a little bit about what you've seen with these BIM storm processes in other industries and how it might help the pharmaceutical industry?
Sure. Let me just kind of show, I think it's hard, having been to a number of BIM storms, it's kind of hard to really understand the power of moving this data between an analytical system and a graphical system. So let me just show the audience a little bit of what I did last night after Bob and I had talked, and he had explained to me some of the things that I needed to put in some of the spaces. And one of them was 80 freezers. So I dropped the 80 freezers in graphically so I could line them up, but that's not what they were called. The standard device or piece of equipment that was in there had a very long name that didn't resemble something as simple as pharmaceutical freezer. So I exported the information out using the software. Let me go to full screen. Let me stop sharing. I'll go to full screen so you can see everything. There, now I think you can see the whole screen now. So by utilizing this one window in the tool, I could export it to different tools. And I exported it to a spreadsheet that captured all the unique components, the FF&E, the windows and things like that. And then I was able to create this spreadsheet very quickly and then change the name of that piece of equipment that was the freezer to something simple like a freezer, so it would graphically show up. So once I did that and just changed all of these 80 devices to a freezer, I could then save this spreadsheet, go back into Common, or go back into the Enuma system, which we're using here. I'm not promoting it, it's the system that I use. And I could just import that very quickly back into here. And because everything has a separate ID, a machine ID, it knew right away to change all the names of these pieces of equipment here. And I need to actually go into the space, so let me do that. I've locked up the system. In
Well,
real time,
I'll say that I was
click on here. Yeah, you click on here and the system comes up.
I was practicing with Mark at 5:30 Eastern, and those freezers were not there. So he was able to do that freezer, that room, and have it ready for this morning. And that's the exact type of thing that happens in design processes where suddenly things change and we need a room with 80 freezers and we need it for the meeting tomorrow.
So actually that was human error. I was in the room up here instead of, but looking at the room down here. So now that I'm in the room, so it populated each one of these 80 devices within seconds with the appropriate name that I had chosen. So that's the power of doing this digitally, rather than doing it when I came into the industry on a drawing board with a parallel rule and having to erase all of that data that was done with a lead holder and replace it. And now that term can be checked in this spreadsheet that we just had up on the screen, and all the data can be normalized and repopulated back into the graphical system. And then that data can be exported into what Nick is using to further the project along and maintain the buildings. I don't know how Nick was able to incorporate it, but Nick, why don't you talk for a little bit about what you did with the data once I sent it off to you?
Yeah, that's a great, great question. So taking the data from that Excel template, we have import templates as well. And it's literally just, copy and paste to get that into the same format. And, as we talk about the open standards and communicating with different applications, we do have the APIs available that in theory, if there was a change to an asset, an MVP plant, or, the CMMS in general, we could pass that information, assuming that the API is available with our, other BIM applications. And, to touch on the design phase, I mean, that's really important because one of the things that I see from a lot of the customers that we work with is that they struggle with data collection, right? So the fact that you have a working model of what that operation is supposed to look like, and can have that easily exported and imported into our system, that's really helpful, for commissioning and getting a site up and running. And I think going back to the whole standards component, making sure that you have standardized naming conventions and, understanding what's going to be reported on, when you're implementing a system like ours, that's going to be important because that's going to help with the initial load and then the operational phase of using a MVP plant. But pretty much what we're doing is we're taking that data, placing it into our import template, and then again we can export that using reports, or we can export it using APIs, which are short for application programming interfaces.
So Nick Armstrong and Bob Smith, can you talk about how this accelerated process not only will help with Pharma 4.0, but just in general?
Sorry. So in general, as far as, during design build, setting this up, one of the things that we talk about frequently is speed to market. Okay. Everyone, let's take the current pandemic response that we have now. There are, the last time I counted, 14 vaccines in the work, and one of them is going to win out, right? It's not only that's development of the science, but they also have to be able to manufacture that. They have to get up and running. This enables that speed to market. Okay. If I'm developing a drug for hemophilia, I probably have 6 other competitors out there developing a drug for hemophilia. The FDA will not approve your drug just because you're cheaper. You have to be better. So we frequently talk about better than the Beatles. Okay. So if your competitor beats you to market and you have this similar technology, you don't get to market. You don't get a drug to patients. Okay. Unless you can demonstrate concretely that your drug is absolutely better than your competitors, you cannot take them out of market and put yours in. So speed to market is absolutely critical. And this is part of what enables that is the build, installation, validation. Validation is a huge part of getting a facility up and running. I have done this in consumer goods, and we've installed entire filling lines, fully validated up and running in 6 months. I've done the same job in pharma, and it's taken 4 years. And that's not unusual to see that happen. So accelerating that path, a lot of this information is part of that path.
Bob Smith, CAI is using some advanced virtual augmentation and virtual reality tools. Can you talk about how that is going to, that we're talking about?
Actually, I think Nick Armstrong has been the one that's kind of pioneered some of our, is HMT1 is what we've kind of dealt with a little bit, Nick, and
yeah.
What's your vision from what you're seeing on that?
So We're in the beginning stages of using the HMT1. It's a realware. It's a piece of hardware that uses augmented reality, right? So it puts things in your field of view that you'll be able to see. With this technology, we've been able to really do two things, and I see this going further in the future in other ways. Number one is remote expert. So I don't know anything. I can go into the field, or I know very little. I'm a junior person. I can go into the field, and Bob Smith can be sitting in Idaho, where he currently is, and help direct me, draw on my screen, help me understand the situation. He sees what I'm seeing. He hears what I'm hearing, and he can give me that expert advice on what we're doing. Number two is actually field execution. Okay, and this is a little bit of in its infancy, but I see this coming by fairly quickly. As we're going through to execute various field verification and testing and going out there and executing this stuff, these tests now come up as scripts in your field of view. You will verify them in real time using a biometric thumbprint on your hip belt, right? That's connected through your HMT1. That's your verification as you're going through. Validation in the pharmaceutical business right now is highly paper driven. On a recent project that I was on, we filled 5 mobile trailers from front to back with paperwork. And that will go away. And this will, the technology and whatnot that we'll go to, in the future, where I see this going is, and it's a very simple use case study. I'm a mechanic. I need to go out and rebuild this pump. I haven't rebuilt this pump in 3 years. I don't remember. Okay. I'm out in the field. I've got my parts with me. I can watch a quick video on my AR headset. I can actually go into there and manipulate a 3D model of the pump and rebuild a virtual pump and then execute the actual thing in the field. That's really where I see this technology going in the future. So we're getting there. It's a slow beast sometimes.
Yes, all the regulations, rightly so, make it challenging to get the proper paperwork and approvals. And so there's going to need to be, on the FDA side, some type of ability to handle the digital approval process. The government is going to have to step up also. Is that right?
Agreed. And so when we've been in discussions with the FDA on these pieces, they're all for it. They, if you can demonstrate a sufficient scientific knowledge of your process as you're going forward, if you can demonstrate control of your process, that's what I really see this effort is. This is really control, where companies get in trouble is when the FDA comes in to do the regulatory inspections and they start seeing a lack of control. Because as a operational model, pharmaceutical companies self-regulate. We self-test, we self-regulate, we do everything. Every couple of years, the FDA or a different regulatory body comes in and inspects our quality system, inspects our self-regulating mechanism to make sure that we're doing it right. But every batch doesn't go to the FDA for release testing and then gets released, right? So they're all about these real-time release testings and getting a speed to market. It's actually more of a challenge within industry to be able to move that faster. It's one of the areas where I actually see the FDA at the forefront of it.
Okay, that's good to know.
Which is great.
Yeah. So, Mark Giuliani, the BIM storm processes have been demonstrated, more than adequately in healthcare and in aerospace and in education and other areas. How do you see the ability to demonstrate these processes helping the pharmaceutical industry?
Well, I think it's much like it is with any other industry. The data is sometimes worth more than the assets themselves. And by enabling a team to come together and work with an owner, work with the user groups, and sit in something that we call a concept design workshop and be able to facilitate with those people and collaborate with them and come up with a list of spaces and work on the layouts of those spaces and input that data into some sort of worksheet that can then be incorporated into a space planning program and exported into a building information modeling program. It really reduces the amount of effort of not only putting in the data multiple times, but reusing that original data, those terms. It helps provide clean data and normalized data throughout the process. In the past, it was not uncommon to almost re-enter everything by hand through the process to get it from one computer system to another computer system. So just, within the past 10 years, this has really sped up the process by enabling people to use their time more efficiently, really be able to spend more time helping the customer and get a better return on investment, because the design time and the kind of creating a spirit of place, creating an environment that people want to come to and want to work in, and being able to utilize that time for just a safer environment in today's day and age. Focus on mechanical systems and clean air and fresh air and keeping people safe from, COVID and those things, and distancing. But all of the technology that we're using and displaying today really provides owners with a higher return on investment. It allows designers to focus more on design and less on the process, and creates an overall holistically a better project.
Thank you, Mark. And I'm remiss in not announcing earlier that Mark is our newest ALN Senior Fellow. Thank you also for plugging the Asset Leadership Thursday at 4 event with your background screen. That's appreciated. And then Bob Smith, I wanted to ask you how you think the pharmaceutical asset information management can build up slowly in the asset leadership network and spread out into the pharmaceutical industry.
I think the power of this is going to be the information. Everybody's seeing the same information. That's one of the issues we have now, is getting to, the source of truth, or whatever you want to call it. But it's, where is this information? How do I get my hands on it? This really will show the power of being able to bring everything together in a nice graphical presentation, and anywhere at any time you can see in real time what's going on, what's happening. So I think working with ALN and CDG, BIMstorm, Mark, everybody, if we can get this model together at ALN, then we can now take it. CAI has very strong ties to the International Society for Pharmaceutical Engineering, so that's going to be a great resource, I think, to, once we have a good working model, a concept, take it to them. We can work, with them to try to push this out throughout the pharmaceutical industry, and just really demonstrate what can be done, how it can be done, and the power behind it.
Well, the Asset Leadership Network would be very honored to present to the International Society of Pharmaceutical Engineering, and perhaps even to the FDA, Nick, if it's helpful to show what's possible.
Yeah, what I was going to add to that is, as the Asset Leadership Network is working to, further adoption of ISO 55000 practices at the federal level, the FDA is part of that, right? The FDA is a part of Health and Human Services. So as it becomes more prevalent within the federal government, now the FDA, when they're going in on their regulatory inspections, are asking about ISO 55000 elements. They're asking about asset management systems. Many clients that we work with, some of them won't do anything until they deprioritize things but if a regulator asks about it, they will move mountains to make it happen. So a lot of the efforts the Asset Leadership Network is doing from the federal level is actually going to help bring the industry further into the future, which I'm excited about.
To that point, our first event in this series included a presentation from the Government Accountability Office, which just 2 weeks ago published a report on the FDA. And the Government Accountability Office found that the FDA was lacking in understanding its own assets, and suggested that an asset management system be used The FDA agreed, and basically what that means is that the FDA is going to start getting familiar with the ISO 55000 management system for asset management. And perhaps PhAIM can make a presentation to the FDA and help them understand ISO 55000 and how it works with these other systems in order to dramatically improve mission success.
No, that's actually a really great point. I do some training of FDA inspectors actually at my alma mater. They train junior inspectors all the time, and asset management is one thing we talk about it. So maybe that's an opportunity to partner with Asset Leadership Network as well on how do we, these folks are going to be the ones in the plants doing the inspections. The more they know, the better off our clients will be.
Well, we have ALN CEO Jim Dieter on the call with us, and I think it's appropriate now to ask Jim how he sees this PhAIM and our connections through the GAO might help us connect to the FDA and ignite some synergies.
Oh, hey, Mike, thanks. I just put a chat comment in along that line. First, I'd like to say that this is a great example of how we can leverage and extend the reach of the ALN, not for the sake of the ALN, but for the sake of the mission that we're all interested in, which is better managing assets and seeing those assets provide value to their organizations and help those organizations achieve their mission and objectives. And that really requires groups like this to coalesce in specific sectors or around specific topics and leverage the infrastructure that's been constructed and is in place and continues to grow daily. It seems in this great October event, just amazing information that we can all share and learn from other sectors and other leaders. And I think it's a uniquely, in the world of asset management, it's kind of uniquely North American or American view and opportunity is this cross-sector discussion. Again, and as I've said other times, in a lot of other countries, it's one area that's focused on asset management, and they're not covering all types of assets in all sectors. But I think in the US, we see this arising in just an array of sectors. And the ALN and those involved have an opportunity to spread that to their sectors, but then in also events like this, very importantly, share their knowledge and their understanding with others and how that can be then adopted and applied in other sectors. Really had my mind going during this whole model and whole discussion. Of the pieces of this that I can see personally are easily transferable to areas that I've am working in currently. So thanks everybody for the great presentation.
Yes, Jim, that's a very good point. And I think the strength of what we're doing here with PhAIM resides in the fact that we've done similar efforts in other industries. And we can point to what's been done in our outreaches to the healthcare industry and the aviation industry. So it's a strength to actually be serving multiple sectors, because much of the core information, the core processes are the same. Use ISO 55000, have your data entered once and securely transferred frequently. Visualize your assets. All these things are similar that can be used over and over in multiple industries. So now we are winding down to the end of the actual 90-minute event, and I would like to give everybody a chance to say a final word before leaving. And again, I thank everybody for participation. I'm very excited about where this is going. Bob Smith?
All right, just want to thank everybody for the opportunity. Pretty excited about the FAME process, so it'd be interesting to see where this goes. Appreciate it.
Nick Armstrong?
Yeah, reiterating what Bob said, I really appreciate all the effort on this team and getting us to this point. I think, one of the things to keep in mind is in pharma, one of the unique factors of pharma is the things that we do now improves patients' lives, right? So all these efforts, all the stuff that's going in is all about, making sure that patients improving their quality of life. So putting that in perspective.
Nick Kissel?
Yeah, it was a pleasure working with everybody. And as everyone has said, it's going to be interesting to see how the project proceeds. But looking forward to participating and seeing how we can provide value to pharmaceutical customers and asset management in general.
Excellent. Mark Giuliani, our most recent ALN Senior Fellow.
Well, thank you for making me an ALN Senior Fellow. And it was great working with everybody on this panel. Thanks for everyone's hard work. And hopefully it was helpful to people out in the audience to see us take this data from concept through occupancy.
Mark, I don't want to speak for the audience, but it was incredibly helpful to me, having kind of heard and seen some of this stuff before, but your display really helped me conceptualize it. So thank you for that. And thank you all for the presentation again. And before we close here, I just want to thank our organizational members, because as always, this wouldn't be possible to go on without their support. And with that, I think we're done here. Thank you guys for being here. See you next time.
All right.